Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. Today, Jyoti Wind is going to take us into the astrology for the second quarter of 2025. And because we're recording this during Mercury in retrograde, it's taken a little bit of doing to get this up and going right. Correct, Jyoti?
Yes, yes, in true Mercury retrograde fashion. Yes, yes. Um,
Jyoti, there's a lot ahead. And I was thinking March was the packed month, but maybe that's not the story.
well, each month has its beauty, you know, and its purpose, I guess, in a sense. And so the good news is that when we start this second quarter of 2025 in April, April 7th, Mercury goes direct. So this retrograde that we're in now that started in Aries, moved retrograde back into Pisces, will go direct in Pisces and will move forward after April 7th. And there's always a sense of relief. We're emerging out of an inner drawn time, and then we come to the full moon on April 12th at 6:22 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And it happens to be that full moon day is the same day that Venus goes direct. Venus was retrograde in Aries, going back into Pisces, goes direct on the 12th of April at 7:02 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, right after the full moon, about less than an hour later. And so our values and priorities begin moving. The things that we've been mulling around and looking at, what do we place value on? What's the new vision for us? What are we taking into this next quarter of the year, especially with Neptune going direct on March 30th, which we're not looking at in this talk, but will come up in the next talk that we do when we look at the last week of March. That Neptune moving into Aries is ushering us into a whole new paradigm, a whole new idea of what we want to create for ourselves as a mass of humanity, and individually, and how that individuality contributes to the mass vision and where we're going. And it's a whole new timeline. So right after that happens, we have Mercury going direct, we have a full moon with Venus going direct, and it's saying, okay, let's implement what we were thinking about all through March.
So, Jyoti, when I think of a full moon, I think of completion, but I'm hearing this, let's implement, which in my mind, I think immediately of a new moon. So, is it let's implement what we've been thinking about over this period?
Yes, and to me a full moon is something that is like peak performance.
Okay.
Things reaching the peak. I don't happen to see the full moon as completion. The new
Okay.
moon is the new cycle. We hit a peak of energy going from the new moon to the full moon. Okay. And then it wanes. The moon wanes in its cycle from the full moon to the next new moon. And we're winding down. So to
Okay.
me, the end of the moon cycle is the day before the new moon. That's the end of the old moon,
Yeah.
in my way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, things are reframing that for me. That certainly makes sense. And of course, it makes more sense what you're sharing.
Well, when we look at this full moon, it is Aries Libra, and our full moons and new moons are moving into this Aries Libra axis for the next year and a half, although we have another set of new and full moons in September that still are with the Pisces Virgo. I'm sorry, we're moving from the Aries Libra back to the Pisces Virgo. So this is the last full moon of Aries Libra. Um, so this full moon is there's a lot of healing that's available here because the sun and Chiron, the planetoid of healing, are the same degree opposing the moon. And so there's options here for healing and for seeing things from a slightly different perspective. Um, the main thing for me in this full moon is keeping the balance of self and other. What I want to set in motion, what's healing for me, and with what's going on with other people or what they might want of me. So, how do I keep a balance between self and other?
And that's really the Aries Libra energy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it is. And it's also the full moon because it's like I'm the sun, other people are the moon. They're over there in a sense. I'm over here. What would I like to set in motion? And then how do I balance that with what other people want to see happen too?
Okay.
Okay. So then we look at the fact that on April 26th, Mercury catches up as Mars opposes Pluto that same day on the 26th. So April 26th is a pretty intense day in the way of Mars opposing Pluto. I mean, that's a confrontational aspect. That's a place of looking at, well, I think this way, and maybe you think that way. And can we come together and make either or an and? Can we do that? Or is it too volatile at the moment and it just needs some room to vibrate and come to a place of settling in a little bit? But Mercury's catching up. It's moving into new territory from its retrograde cycle. And in a sense, we're off and running.
Hmm.
And then there's a new moon on April 27th at 1:31 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And this new moon has the sun and moon in Taurus, new moon. They're both together. And they are part of what's called a T cross. We've talked about this
Hmm.
before. So there's Mars opposing Pluto, squaring the sun and moon, the new moon. This is These are all fixed signs, Aquarius and Leo and Taurus. And the only one not necessarily involved, I mean, it is involved, but we're not really addressing Lilith, which represents the shadow. And then that makes it a fixed grand cross because Lilith is in Scorpio. And within orb, very tight orb there, of making it a grand cross. So let's just stay with the planets for right now and looking at Mars opposed Pluto squaring the sun and moon, the new moon. Um, you can feel pushed to make changes that you might be thinking about, but maybe don't exactly feel ready for. Okay. Because that Mars opposed Pluto, I mean, that's a push. That's a push. That's intensity. That's what I say to people who have that natally. You can push a Mack truck down the road by yourself. You can make things happen. Might not always look pretty, but you can make it happen.
Hmm.
And so this is saying that it's pushing all of us to look at this new cycle. It's not an eclipse, just a new moon, sun and moon at 7 degrees Taurus. But it's pushing people to look at, what's the next vision? What's the next thing that I want to do? And where am I getting in my own way?
Hmm.
Or where am I letting things outside of me stop me? And so there's this push from Pluto on one side and push from Mars on the other, and saying, okay, the energy's here, like it or not. What do you want to do? What do you want to set in motion?
Wow. And I'm wondering too, with Mercury catching up right before that, there is that forward motion that added from Mercury's shift.
Yes. Yes. So you might actually have the insights and
Yeah.
not feel quite so pushed. So if we look at it as a grand cross, okay, Sun and Moon opposing Lilith, which represents the shadow, Mars opposing Pluto. If we look at that as a grand cross, then it's like we are also inviting in the shadow into our awareness and asking to see how is the universe mirroring our inner stubbornnesses, our inner difficulties, our inner reluctance. You know, what's happening out here that the universe is offering as a mirror for us to see where we get in our own way, and maybe a kinder, gentler way we could see to do things to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a push to practically apply what you know.
Well, I think this is really important to know. We're just a little more than a month away, that this is not that we shouldn't always use the retrograde period of Mercury, but this seems particularly important this time, and to be ready.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's taken us inward, looking at, new ideas, new concepts. When Mercury first went into Aries, then it retrograded back into Pisces. We mold things around. Does this fit? Does this work? Is this, really
Mhm.
applicable? Or like on an integrity level, is this right for me? Kind of. And now Mercury goes direct, and the new moon hits, and it's like, okay, it's an intense new moon, but let's go.
Yeah.
And then on the heels of that, before we leave April, it's kind of like the last little ding, on the 29th of April to the 11th of May, Pluto is stationing. So it's like an entrenched Scorpio time period from the 29th of April to the 11th of May. And so anything that is needing to be transformed, changed, made right, will emerge during that time as Pluto is getting ready to turn retrograde for the following 5 months. It does that every year, either in March or April. Pluto will station, turn retrograde for about 5 months, go direct in the early fall, and then we get to outwardly work on things. But this is an inner working because Pluto's turning retrograde. So we're going within, we're being magnetized or pulled in to, over the next 5 months, just work on some things that maybe we hadn't gotten to. There's always things to get to. I mean, how could anybody be bored, Anyway, so anything that you might want to say or comment on as far as April goes?
No, that makes perfect sense to me, Toti. Let's jump
Okay.
into May.
Okay. May, to me, May is a little bit easier.
Okay.
Uh, astrologically. I mean, true, on the 4th of May, Pluto does go retrograde. So the 4th of May, what is that? May the 4th go with you, or whatever it is, the 4th would be a very intense day because Pluto is, in a sense, changing direction. I mean, not really, but energetically. And we're working in that we're stepping through that inner door. And then on the 12th is the full moon. And this is Sun in Taurus, conjunct the planet Uranus, and Moon in Scorpio. And so we're looking at our sense of change. Where do we feel in ourselves that it's now time for change for us personally? It's a full moon, so it's about self and other. It's about bringing a balance in what happens in our relationships, our emotional ties, our attachments. Sun and the planet Uranus together is definitely about, okay, Where do we need to make changes? What is calling to us in no uncertain terms that is our responsibility to say, okay.
So when we talk about personal changes, we could talk about where I live and who I spend time with and my relationships and what else, Jyoti?
Um, any area of life, really. This is not, set in stone in any particular house, really, because the full
Okay.
moon is a global event. And it's not just about what happens in either Washington, D.C. or in, Boulder,
Okay.
Colorado. So it's just where it hits you, you collectively, where it hits you, and how you navigate the energies that are there that you kind of know are really up for change. We all
Okay.
kind of sense or feel something
Yeah.
like, maybe I need to do this a little bit better, or maybe I need to show up in a kind of different way for this particular situation. Or, well, I've been ignoring this successfully for the past bit of time. And now it's like, I can't ignore this anymore. Because the planet Uranus, you hear that beat of a different drummer, and you're saying, okay, full moon, big energy, need to deal with it. And just to say a little widely, but Mars is still opposing Pluto in this full moon. It'll move on, but it's still opposing Pluto. And now, instead of the new moon that we had at the end of April, now in this full moon, we have Mercury square Pluto. And Mercury square Pluto is saying, what do I need to look deeper for? Where do I need to get under the radar and see what's trying to show itself to me? Okay. Um, and where are you willing to see a bigger picture of yourself because of that Sun Uranus conjunction?
Okay.
Okay. And then we look at Saturn entering Aries. So first we have Neptune entering Aries on the 30th of March. And here in May, Saturn comes along to enter Aries. It's been in Pisces, and it will retrograde back into Pisces. It's not till 2026 that both Neptune and Saturn stay in Pisces. Um, but I mean, stay in Aries. Sorry, they will retrograde back into Pisces. And they will not be together, Saturn and Neptune. I think it's July 12th or something, that Saturn and Neptune will be together the same degree in Aries. And we will be looking at some pretty new concepts and ideas. Okay. But Saturn moving into Aries is like saying, we've been playing mud pies for the past couple years with Saturn and Pisces. Things have felt sluggish, like, slogging along. Okay. Saturn goes into Aries. There is an old expression that says Saturn in Aries is like driving with the brakes on. So because Aries is so impulsive. It's got its foot on the gas all the time. And Saturn is going, well, okay, let's take a break. Let's slow it down just a little bit. And so it has the other foot on the brake, just playing with the brake, not hard on the brake. And so it's like forward movement, stop and assess. Let's check it out. Is this what we really want to do? Is this the new vision that we're trying to manifest here? Okay, let's go a little forward. Let's take stock again. Let's make sure it's practical, that it'll hold water, or in this case, hold fire, and we'll be able to contain it. We'll be able to do something with this new vision, especially as Saturn gets closer to Neptune.
I'm already feeling car sick, Jyoti.
Yes, that might be a theme for the next couple of years as Saturn enters Aries and stays there for 2 years. That would be interesting. Um, on the 26th of May is the new moon. And so this new moon is, relatively milder, I would think, than some of the others have been that we've been looking at. Mars is no longer opposing Pluto. So that push and drive and tension is not there. The sun and moon are together in Gemini, conjuncting Mercury, which is conjuncting the planet Uranus. So it's almost like, Gemini is really big on communication, what you have to say, and have it be meaningful and not too scattered and diverse in its energy. So this suggests that there's a broader conversation that's going on underneath everything else. There's some type of a broader conversation that's going on. This sun, moon, Mercury, and even the planet Uranus are all trine to Pluto. So it's very powerful, this kind of subtle conversation that's going on underneath everything. It's pushing you in a sense, or opening a door, maybe might be more appropriate to say, for you to see what's underneath things, to be willing to look deeper. And it's a major new cycle of empowerment. Okay. And we'll go deeper, as we do the weekly or bi-weekly.
Yeah, of course. We
bi-monthly.
could tease it out a little bit more then.
Right. This is just an overview.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you ready for June?
Yeah. So here's June. Bring it on.
Okay. On June 9th, Jupiter enters Cancer. So it's been in Gemini for the past year. And so Jupiter enters Cancer on the 9th. And it's like you want to create safe space. You want to cook for people. You want to have, a nice, comfortable kind of situation to relax in. You also might be one of those people who are interested in old wisdoms, ancient knowledge. And Jupiter in Cancer has access to the wisdom of the ancients. That's how it was put when I was first learning astrology. And so Jupiter entering Cancer can bring up old, proven truths for us to incorporate into our day to day over that following year. But it is about creating safe space, and whatever that looks like individually or collectively. So people feel safe, they feel like they're covered, and nobody's kind of lacking in a sense.
Okay.
Then we come to the full moon on June 11th at 1:44 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I 1:44 p.m. 1:44. I think it's 1:44 a.m. I think that's a mistake. Sorry about that. I think it's 1:44 a.m. because I have the chart in front of me for Washington, D.C., because when I do the full moons and the new moons, I really do it for the capital of this country. And and this is saying 3:44 a.m. So it must be 1:44 a.m. for Mountain Daylight Time. My apologies. So this full moon changes. Sun in Gemini, moon in Sag. Mars is square the planet Uranus, so it's come off its opposition to Pluto. Now it's going to wreak havoc with the planet Uranus. I mean, it's interesting how Mars is just kind of moving along. It's been very important this year. Normally, in any other year, we don't pay that much attention to Mars. Just, it shows up here and there. But this year, with its retrograde, and then for 11 weeks and then going direct, and then opposing Pluto, now squaring the planet Uranus, this is a very Mars time frame for us. And it's saying be mindful of personal space, and be aware of what's going on around you. My usual example for Mars square Uranus is be mindful of your space so you don't forget that you left a cabinet door above you open and
Right.
you stand up quickly. That's an ouch, you know? So Mars says be mindful of your environment. And the sun and moon in opposition, no big energies to the well, it squares the nodes. And so it's saying that you're looking at the giveaway and boundaries. You're looking at how do you manage boundaries? How do you take care of the details and yet look at the bigger picture as well? And how do you have boundaries so that you're not giving yourself away? You're developing a deeper level of trust and faith. You're not trying to overanalyze things. Um, and I've got five streams of thought going through here at the same time. And I'm just trying to pick one, and stay with it. Because immediately I start thinking, oh, overanalyzation is a response to trauma, and so I don't necessarily want to go there. I just want to say what we're learning is the opposite point this year about developing a deeper level of trust and faith and going with the flow. And this full moon is really challenging us a bit to look at how do we do that dance, that boundary dance.
Mm.
Okay. So now we are looking at the summer solstice, which happens on June 20th at 10:40 p.m. Summer solstice at 8:42 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I'll stay with my time zone here. And it gives Sun in Cancer, 0 degrees Cancer. That's the degree of the summer solstice. We begin the second quarter of the pagan calendar or the astrological calendar. What we're looking at is the second quarter of our Gregorian calendar. Okay.
Mm.
So it gives Sun in Cancer and Moon in Taurus. So I mean, they're exactly sextile, exactly 60 degrees apart. And the Sun and Moon. This is opportunities for growth and movement. This doesn't talk about push and drive. This doesn't talk about, any have tos. This is saying maybe relax a little bit. The Sun is with Jupiter, very creative, very expansive. It does square Saturn and Neptune as Saturn and Neptune are coming closer together at this summer solstice. They're about a half a degree apart, Saturn and Neptune and Aries, squaring the Sun and Jupiter. And it's really looking at the illusions of how we limit ourselves. Sometimes we might say, well, I don't know if I can do that or not. Or that scares me. I don't know if I want to take that on or step into that. And maybe there's really nothing to be afraid of. Maybe that's fear is just an illusion,
Mm.
that helps us limit
Right.
ourselves and say no to things. And so because Saturn and Neptune are together, that's really the energy of renting the veil and saying, take responsibility for the illusions that you've created for yourself in order to survive. No blame. But what is it now time to kind of move aside because we don't need that anymore? We've grown into ourselves enough. I mean, if I just look at this Sun square Neptune, Sun square Saturn, it's about becoming your own authority. This
Mm.
summer solstice for the next quarter. If I just take it apart and look at Sun square Neptune, it's like, who am I? Who am I now? And who am I if I take responsibility for moving past my fears? And then who am I? Because I might not have known that part of myself ever in this life yet, And so even though there's a real kind of gentler room to move,
Mhm.
there is also behind the scenes a subtle push to say, who am I at this point in time?
Yeah. So in this gentler going with the flow and being supported, there's a big question that hangs over that it and it feels different because in the first 2 months, everything feels really tight and pushy. And this
Yes.
feels like there's spaciousness to even ponder that question.
Yes, and the fact that Jupiter and Saturn are squaring, they're coming back into a square relationship. And it's Jupiter says to Saturn, let me help you push past the places where you've said no. And
Mm,
now is the time to do it.
mm, I like that.
So Jupiter kind of extends an invitation to that part of us that might be scared. I mean, sometimes, I see Jupiter in Cancer, in a feminine sign like Cancer, feminine meaning energy, um, as the great mother, you
Mhm.
know, and she's extending a hand and saying, it's safe, it's okay. You can step in here and have a cup of tea, and we'll look at some things, and I'll help you walk through the door so you don't have to buy into that smaller self anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, which in and of itself is very profound,
sure.
but this is fairly simple.
Yeah.
Okay, so then 5 days later we come to the new moon. This is the new moon in Cancer, on the 25th of June at 4:32 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And this is saying uh, it has sun, moon, and Jupiter all together, both squaring Saturn and Neptune. They didn't move far from the solstice chart. And so it is a little bit more of a push to say, okay, let's keep working on where am I limiting myself. And, Lauren, it's very interesting to me because people who are about 67 years old right now, if my math and my thinking is correct here, they were born with this Saturn Neptune conjunction in Libra,
Okay. Okay.
and so here we are with this Saturn Neptune conjunction again, but in Aries in the opposite sign, and so babies being born now are carrying this one, Saturn Neptune in Aries, but it makes me wonder how these roughly 67, 68-year olds will respond to this Saturn Neptune, because when they had it in Libra, it was about bringing their spiritual beliefs and concepts into their relationships. Libra. How do you ground? How do you manifest what you believe to be true? Not just have these airy spiritual concepts, but how do you live it? How do you ground it in your relationships? And this time, this one is about in Aries, and it's about the individual, and
Mm,
it's about setting things in motion, being the pioneer. How do you bring what you spiritually know to be true and stand up behind it and live it, you
wow.
know? And so the square to the sun, moon, and Jupiter just says, well, what might be getting in your way? And there is a yod in the heavens for that new moon, a Y formation.
Mm,
Let me see if I can pick this out here easily. It is the sun and moon at 4 degrees Cancer, in conjunct Pluto at 3 Aquarius, which is in conjunct Mars at 4 Virgo. So it's really tight. At the most, it's 1 degree apart. And so it's sun and moon, Pluto, um, sun and moon, Mars to Pluto. And so it's saying there's opportunities here to I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over, but it's like there's opportunities here to really bring in whatever it is for you to do. I mean, the odds happen here and there. They're not like every day lunch. They show up from time to time, but it's an aspect of almost like fate. It's an aspect of something special is happening here, something that doesn't happen every day. And there are opportunities, there are doors open for whoever says yes to step through. Okay. And
Yeah. And you know, Jyoti, I mean, we are repeating this theme over again, but each time it has a slightly different flavor. And I find that really beautiful because what might appeal to me isn't going to appeal to someone else. And so, you know, I'm listening for something that someone else might not resonate for. And so the fact that we get this a couple different times in different ways, I believe is really encouraging because that would speak to me that more people are going to come into more power and step out and do the thing they've been wanting to do.
yes, yes, well put, Lauren. Yes, yes, great interpretation. Yes. And it is true that this whole time frame has the overview of change, and so
Mhm.
a little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah.
It looks like this today, it looks like that tomorrow. It works for me today, it works for you tomorrow.
Sure.
It's like we're being massaged down the birth canal,
Yeah.
into this new
Yeah.
time frame, and the universe's muscles are contracting and pushing and massaging us so that when we emerge, we're ready.
Yeah. And I can't help but think too, there's a momentum building with this because
Oh,
as
yeah.
the number increases of those of us that are taking these actions and accepting these invitations, um, there's going to become a tipping point. I mean, we know that we've talked, every astrologer talks about that, like we're approaching it, but I suddenly hear in your interpretation of this quarter, like, oh, I see how it's going to happen.
Yes, little by little.
Yeah,
Because if we were a precipitous birth, where all of a sudden one in labor and birth, there's
right.
no time to adjust and to let go and to work
Yeah,
our own system to feel safe instead of at sea and terrorized because we have no idea. I mean, most of us don't have any idea what it's going to eventually look like, maybe a seed of thought, but we would be terrorized and paralyzed
yeah,
and unable to move through the changes we need to move through gradually
yeah,
to get from here to there.
yeah, yeah.
So I want to look at the next aspect in June is the 27th, from the 27th of June to the 12th of July, Neptune stations.
Yeah.
So we ended April into May with Pluto stationing. Now we're ending June into July with Neptune stationing. And it's telling us that things may not be exactly as they seem. So we have to trust. We have to say, okay, even if it isn't exactly the way I would like it to be, I'm open to seeing what it looks like it needs to be.
Yeah.
And then on the 30th of June, Mercury enters its shadow. It's in Leo, and it'll enter its shadow for the next about 2 weeks down the road. Um, Mercury Mercury enters its shadow. Mercury will turn retrograde about 2 weeks after that. So on the 30th of June, Mercury is letting you know there's another retrograde coming, and it's in Leo, so you'll be pondering your dreams, your goals, and what you would like to see happen,
Mm.
and what you need to educate yourself about.
Yeah.
Because Mercury in Leo likes to gather knowledge. It likes to know, it likes to be in the know.
Oops.
We
Ruby
have a
would like to
visitor.
know as well.
Yes.
So that retrograde of Mercury will take us through July then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. With its coming up to the retrograde, turning retrograde, and I didn't look ahead to see when it
Yeah.
goes direct.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool, Jyoti. I'm walking away with a really good picture. I hope all of our audiences, I'm pretty sure they will. Anything else you feel needs to be shared?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Nice and full.
It
Thank you.
is. You're welcome.